Welcome to the future. When Lian Li was about to make a new fan, they had the choice between optimizing for more airflow or optimizing for more static pressure. They decided for a monitor. This is the Lian Li TL LCD 120A fan that has a 1.6 inches round LCD display right in the middle. And it is so freaking customizable that you can watch this video right on it. The funny thing is, Lian Li seems to be so dedicated to making sure that their fans are considered as like a premium product that they even installed a good screen. Like, this is not a gimmicky thing. This is a IPS panel with 400 by 400 resolution. With it only being 1.6 inches, that's like 250 pixels per inch. And to put things into perspective, a 27-inch monitor at 4K, which is like really dense, would be somewhere around 163. So this is dense. And you can do so much with that little monitor. Display the CPU and GPU temperature, or the respective loads. Show some fan speeds, or just show a random image or a GIF to, waste a lot of money to show a random ass image. Or my new favorite thing, parts of this video, because you can throw in MP4 files just like anything else. Of course, doing anything with them will require you to use Lian Li's latest L3 software. And the only thing to keep in mind here is that you are restricted to daisy chaining up to 6 using that interlocking or interconnected mechanic. But let's talk a bit more about the fan itself. It exists in two size versions, 120 or 140, and from there you can choose between black or white. However, there is also something special this time over the TL series as a whole, because we also got a reverse spinning version. So a fan blade design which is essentially reversed to make sure that you are looking at the good looking side while you get air blasted in your face. For us here, we got the 120mm reverse spinning TL LCD fan in white. So all of the performance numbers and benchmarks will solely focus on exactly that one. Compared to previous versions of Lian Li's Uni fans, we got some things that have already been seen, like the 28mm thickness and the infinity mirror and stripes going all around the fan, which do look nice, and similarly to basically every other Lian Li Uni fan, they are implemented great. Very fluent color changes, the LEDs are bright, I can't count them, so they're the usual Lian Li stuff. But some things did change, like for example the corner pieces. In the past, Lian Li made quite good corners for their fans, allowing a regular radiator screw to be used despite the thicker fan. But this time, we not only got the fully rubber corner piece, but we also have an additional piece of rubber that you can reinstall after installing the fan to completely hide the fact that there is a screw in the first place, which is simply beautiful. And because they are present on both sides, for radiators, this will just create a design that is new. And in case you find yourself lost when removing these due to your sausage fingers, like a leftover PCIe bracket does the job perfectly fine without scratching any piece of the fan. Then we also have a few changes made on the interlocking mechanism, the daisy chaining of the fans. And I believe these to be bad ones and good ones at the same time. First off, the cable has slightly changed, like it did in the past, to make sure that you don't use the wrong cable or the new cable on a previous series Lian Li fan. Just make sure to connect it on the side with the pins, not the one with the pads, or it just won't work. The bad change is about the little knobs for hooking multiple fans up to each other. You can still do that, up to 6 fans without a problem, but the knob seems to be slightly smaller and different. So A, you cannot connect the LCD model to anything else for obvious reasons, and B, it makes it incredibly hard to remove when you suffer from like the aforementioned sausage finger problem. Like, I have a really hard time twisting them and removing them. Some other changes were also made on the controller side. But before that, a triple pack of Lian Li Uni TL LCD 120 reverse fans, wow, that was a long name, comes with obviously 3 fans, a controller, mounting material, and a single cable. Now onto the changes. The controller still uses the usual USB 2 header for connection and PWM for fan speed pass-through. and then ARGB pass-through and all. But instead of using SATA to get power, we now got a 6-pin PCIe power connector, and that is great. I'm looking at it this way. Every time I build a random PC, I end up with some stupid controller. And the controller, like, in itself isn't stupid. It's the fact that every time I need to connect a full 1 meter long SATA power harness to my modular power supply just to provide myself with a single SATA power cable, where I already know that the other 4, the other 5, I won't use at all. And that annoys the hell out of me. But with this, it's much more interesting because I need a bunch of PCIe cables for the GPU anyway. And more often than not, I got a GPU that needs 3 or maybe even 4 PCIe power cables to, power on the octopus. And I prefer to route them separately, like one used plug or one used PCIe 8-pin plug per cable, leaving me with a bunch of 8 or 6-pin, sometimes you have like the added 2, which are just unused. And these ones seem to be the perfect fit for the controller. And now let's finally take a look at some numbers. According to Lian Li, we are looking at a 1900 RPM quick spinning fan that can push up to 54.3 CFM at up to 2.83 mm of H2O and whilst yelling at up to 31 dB. In the center, we got the same fluid dynamic bearing we saw on previous fans, but this time, obviously, it's heavily modified to make sure that the monitor is kept in position whilst the 9 blades are designed to spin around it. Something that I found to be very positive about these, or how Lian Li handled it, reverse spinning fans will not perform exactly as their regular spinning counterparts, or not all of them at least. We have already seen fan manufacturers state identical specs, so CFM and static pressure, and the performance benchmarks clearly showed otherwise. For these here, on the other hand, there are indeed different numbers on the spec sheet. Not extremely different numbers, except for the noise, but different nonetheless. So I do appreciate that there is some level of honesty here. How much we will see later on, or once I get the regular and then we can compare them, but at least something is there. Then there was another change which I did not appreciate at all. Unlike every Lian Li Uni set I have ever seen, this one does not come with an extension cable allowing you to physically separate a block of fans, as in, for example, 2 in the top of the case and 1 in the back. For these, it's a simple 360mm block no matter what you do. And that, in my opinion, was a very stupid idea. Including it, as they did in the past, would have been much better, and it would not have forced me to do what I needed to do, but more on that later. Before we jump into the benchmarks, how far can you push that gorgeous little monitor using L3? Well, pretty freaking far. You can choose a variety of sensors to display and play around with how the whole thing should be displayed, and that's not even talking about the stuff you could always do with the ARGB lines anyway, or the mirror. But the display, you can play around with images, fully fetched videos, and to make sure that you don't have a hard time turning your head to read a number, you can make everything spin in 360, or like in 90-degree blocks. It's a good job. You can do whatever the hell you want to a certain degree. And the only thing that I would have wished for is taking away that degree by allowing you to access the screen outside of L3, or for L3 to have a way to pass through a feed, like display more data than you can gather in L3 in some other way. Or maybe like a live stream feed. And now let's finally get to how we did the benchmarks, because to gather them, we actually needed to do a lot of extra work this time. First off, whatever L3 does to display all of the videos and imagery onto the fan will inevitably hit the PC in some way. In some way or another, something is rendering or at least decoding whatever is displayed. That's why we made sure that there is always a secondary PC powering them, whilst the actual benchmark machine is just getting hit as always. So that the hit of whatever the monitor, no matter what is happening to display that image, it is being done on the secondary PC. Then we need to speak about my dark secret, because I don't have an additional set of these, and because Lian Li casually decided not to include an extension cable anymore, I had an issue, because our case simulator that we use to recycle the air within it whilst we measure the temperature on a passive P1, the case simulator, well, that one requires me to install two fans which are relatively far from each other, which I couldn't. So I had no other possibility than to do horrible stuff. And I mean horrible, like the amount of Noctua PWM extensions that lost their life that day is just horrific. Not even talking about the fact that I couldn't use the soldering iron on one side of the fans, it wouldn't stick. This is epoxy. On one hand, I am really fucking proud about myself that this monstrosity actually works. On the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if Lian Li never sends me anything again. On the case benchmark machine, the reverse spinning LCD fans performed surprisingly well. Our case benchmarks are done using a little simulator type of machine that uses two identical fans to recycle the air within it, whilst we measure the CPU temperature using a passively cooled Noctua P1. Using this approach allows us to eliminate the potential performance of a real CPU cooler, whilst not relying on a huge amount of static pressure to get the air through a dense heatsink by sheer force. Hence, not giving radiator optimized, static pressure optimized fans just a benefit overall. Letting the LCD fan spin at their max speed allowed the CPU to be cooled down to 43.7 degrees C above ambient, which surprisingly enough is a very good result. It's the same that we achieved using a Noctua A12X25, something that I wasn't expecting in the slightest. Also interesting to note here is how much better these are performing compared to our only other reverse spinning fan, the Montech RX 120. But keep in mind that they are spinning quite a bit faster. Even if the max performance result was surprising in a positive way, the noise to performance ratio wasn't that surprising. By lowering the fan speed in 10% steps while monitoring the noise and the temps, we can create these noise to performance lines. From start to finish, the LCD fan lost to other notable contestants like the Noctua A12, Arctic P12, Fantex M25 or, God forbid, the T30. The only one that it was able to beat was the Montech RX 120. And that only for as long until both were either noise or temp normalized. For our radiator benchmarks, we strap any given fan to a 10 FPI 80mm thick radiator while we measure the temperature of the water and subtract the ambient air temperature, giving us the temperature of the water above ambient. Unfortunately, the reverse spinning versions of the LCD Lian Li fan suffered from the same fate as the Montech fan did. The performance ended up at the quite bottom of the list with 14.9 degrees C above ambient. On the noise to performance graph, this trend pretty much continued with the Uni-TL LCD reverse spinning fan losing to basically everything, even, in this case, the Montech RX 120. Here it's really important to note that the test might, or is, I already know it is significantly unfair for these. For radiator benchmarks, or for any benchmarks we do, we have very specific rules that I apply every time. Like the air always goes in the same way, it goes out the same way, and for reverse spinning fans, this inevitably means that I need to turn them around, and that action could, well, I know it will, it affects the results, the performance results quite a bit. Usually, I wouldn't care, stick to the rules, but in this very specific case, it makes a lot of sense given what this is. I can perfectly see these being used inside a big ass case with a rad, for example, on the side, like as a side intake, pulling air in through the rad, or in the bottom, in a case that actually allows like good fan airflow from the bottom, and then pulling air in through the bottom. And in all of these scenarios, the fan would be pulling, not pushing. And it's specifically because of the monitor that I don't see push being ever used on here, because you would inevitably be blocking off that monitor, and who in his right mind would buy these and then just block the monitor? So as an exception, we did repeat the whole benchmark part with the fan installed as it would be inside a regular build. However, take these numbers with a big grain of salt, because this also introduces a push versus pull problem, where every fan was tested on push and this is the only one tested on pull. So please mainly focus on the original versus the new, how they would actually be used results. Otherwise it's just going to be unfair for whatever you are comparing it to. In a pull setting, the performance of the LCD version improved dramatically. At max speed we saw an improvement of over 4 degrees C above ambient, making the fan perform kinda good overall. A similar thing could be observed on the noise to performance front, where the improvement was so big it came close to an A12X25. And here another very important note. When we make noise measurements, I usually, with a regular fan, I'm facing it to the dB meter and the air is being pushed to the back. In this case, however, if I would do that, the air would start hitting the dB meter and that would end up at a very, very bad result. The noise numbers that I use for the noise to performance graphs, even for this pull version, is made using push noise numbers, because otherwise I just couldn't make the measurement. Now, to be very clear, this is still very far from being the best fan, but compared to the normalized benchmark results that we saw before, it's not like its performance on rads is trash. It's okay. And to be fair, once you install it as you would inside a regular build, it's really okay. So, performance aside, this is a very, very special fan, no doubt. It has a freaking monitor in the center. And that's also the main reason for its existence. It's a show-off fan. It's not meant to be the most brutal performing and good performing fan out there. Its purpose is to be slammed into the most beautiful system, creating an even more beautiful system. But thankfully, you can use these screens somewhat wisely. Display a temperature readout, show a load, that kind of thing that can be useful. For it being the reverse spinning version, I see its usefulness a bit more restricted. Like in the front or in the top of the case, it's obviously a no-go zone for these fans, given the direction that they blow to or blow towards. But the main position to install these, in my opinion, is either in the bottom of a case, of one that allows for bottom fans to be actually useful, like for example a Lian 011 dynamic, or on the sides as an air intake, which would be perfectly fine. However, for a use case like that, the case benchmark graph would be the most applicable one. And even if they got a surprising amount of burst, they are not necessarily the quietest. Quality-wise, it's still a Lian Uni fan. They feel amazing, the RGB implementation is as flawless as any other Uni fan, and the improved corners are just great. But the screen, it's a miniature IPS display with a ridiculous pixel density, so yes, it's a very, very good implementation. But what about the price? Well, you decide. The MSRP of a triple pack is set to be about $150 or about $47 for a single one. Considering I pay $30 for a normal Noctua fan or a Be Quiet Silent Wing or an Alpha Cool Metal or whatever, I do not believe that the price is incredibly expensive. It's still expensive, it's damn expensive for a fan, but this is not just a fan. It's a fan, but simultaneously it's like a case styling part. The screen allows these to be more than just fans. It's a bit like the people who install mini monitors behind the glass of a case. How much do these monitors cost? And that's a brutally unnecessary thing. It's a good looking thing, but let's be honest, you are paying for your rig to look good. It's like sleeved cables. Nice to have, but it's just for the design. And considering it's a $17 up price to go from a regular very, very good fan to this thing, I don't really think is that exaggerated. Or at least I was under the impression that Lian would demand something like $80 per fan, but when I saw 47 for a single one, I was much happier than I initially expected. So for who is this fan? Well, people who are looking to have that screen and are willing to sacrifice some extra money and potential performance for it. But okay, for today, this is going to be it for Lian Li and their new Unifan TL LCD 120 reverse spinning fan. And at this point, a huge thank you to them for sending them over. On a side note, we also have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And of course, we still have channel membership, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your store for an OG poop emoji, it's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but will also serve to get self-paid or more self-paid Lian Li samples in the future, because I see no way that they are ever going to forgive me for this. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the Lian Li Unifan P28, which are also Lian Li Unifans. Everything is a Lian Li Unifan. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.